Thank you very much. Thank you very much. How's everybody doing today? Good? All right. I like when people talk back to me. I'm not a traditional lecturer. The clip you just saw was an excerpt from my film, Moral Panic, More Heat Than Light, a documentary film on gangs and prisoner reentry produced by the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice. What made this film unique and special is that not only was it informative and entertaining, but it was also the first time we implemented Amplify, Inc.'s data-backed digital storytelling model, combining the voices of policymakers, law enforcement officials, and young people with policy reform as the backbone. The young man you're looking at right now, Louis Rivera Jr., was one of my first subjects turned friends. You know, Louis was just a really sweet, nice and open young kid who allowed me to document the intimate corners of his life. And Louis was killed in a random drive-by shooting on May 5th of 2005. And when he was killed, it was labeled as a gang shooting, but Louis Rivera wasn't actually in a gang. It was implied that he was a criminal. And Louis Rivera Jr. did steal cars, but he would just joyride around in them and then abandon them. He wouldn't sell them. And when I asked him, you know, hey, Louis, man, why you steal cars? He told me for the same reason that white boys bungee jump, for the adrenaline rush. And when he said that, you know, it really stuck with me because, not because it was so profound, but because it was true. And it re-emphasized something that I already knew, and it was that there weren't actually that many opportunities for our opportunity youth, you know, and so many of them were falling to the wayside and dying while we kind of profit off our work with them. It also re-instilled something that was already in me, and that was that it was up to us, and me, myself, but us in this room to create these opportunities for them. But before we could create these opportunities, there had to be exposure, you know, exposure to different skill sets, to resources, to the things that we've been made privy to, different outlets of expression, you know, creative and vocal. That's what changed my life. You know, I was allowed to participate in my own decision-making process. So, a little bit about me. You know, I was born in Brooklyn Heights, which is an upper middle class, predominantly white neighborhood. I was raised in a two-family household. My father was a professor and dean at Hunter College and a painter. My mother was a herbologist, a reflexologist, a yoga instructor, and a paralegal. And they exposed me to the arts early on as a child. My mother would take me around the Lower East Side gallery scene, which at that time, you know, all the prominent pop artists of the 80s kind of dominated that. And then my father would take me to the Studio Museum and the National Black Theater and all these places. So I had a very cultural, kind of esoteric, you know, arts background as a kid. But after high school, I took a left, you know, and I went into the streets and I stayed there for about 10 years. And at that time, you know, I would have been considered an opportunity or at-risk youth. But it wasn't because that's who I was. It was because, you know, I made a couple of mistakes and I was doing what my people were doing at that time. You know, I work at YouthBuild Newark as their resident documentarian. I've been there for the last 11 years. And having, you know, worked there and with this population for this amount of time, I still don't even feel right referring to them as at-risk or opportunity youth, because neither one of those adjectives allows room for the varied nuances and intricacies of who these young people are. And it doesn't speak at all to how layered and how dynamic they are. So digital storytelling can help them and us to remember this and our similarities by highlighting the parts of these young people's lives that we don't often see or remember, their dreams, their goals, their ambitions, as well as who they are in their hearts or intentions. These young people don't wake up as opportunity youth. They wake up as individuals and need to be dealt with as such, addressing their needs and wants, not our own for them. You know, often as service providers, we believe that we know best, leaving very little room for young people's personal dreams and desire to be nurtured and cultivated. This opportunity youth game has become such big business that a lot of us have forgotten or lost track of why we started in the first place, hopefully to actually make a difference in young people's lives. But to do this, we must also nurture young people's spirits. Because we can get them all the skill sets in the world, but if we forget to touch their hearts, our impacts will be extremely temporary. We also need to include them in this conversation. You know, through YouthBuild, and I'm straying a little bit, but I've been all around talking to all these different service providers, and we all talk to each other, but rarely do I see the young people included. And we talk about them instead of to them. And I think one of the easiest ways, you know, we can touch their hearts is, one, first listening to them, and then two, giving them a voice and creating platforms and safe spaces that they can be honest with themselves and us and the world about who they really are, what are the issues they're really facing, and what they want and desire for their own lives. Doing this can help change the narrative as to who these young people are and create true empathy and understanding, which seems to be semi-absent as we focus on our funders' data and statistics. But am I foolish enough to believe that storytelling alone can save lives? No. But I do know that data-backed digital storytelling can reach far and wide beyond young people's reach to touch the people who can actually affect change and make a difference in young people's lives, including our funders, adding a human face and voice to our data and statistics. Thank you for your time. Akintola Hanif.